I gave that one to Brian. Ask him for it and he'll give it back to you. Okay. So, is it gonna be a long meeting?
We'll be out of here in 30 minutes. Good evening. The Jail Law Enforcement and Courts Committee is hereby called to order. Could I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The agenda is passed. Oop, damn, I forgot to turn the pages. Item 3 on the agenda is the Juvenile Detention Report. Director Tingsley.
Good evening. In the month of March, we had 29 intakes with the average length of stay being 5.69 days. The average daily population of March is 12.71. The highest number of intakes was obstruction of governmental operations, misdemeanor at 4. Of the 29 intakes, 18 were from Division 3 and 11 were from Division 8. There were 11 total transports, 7 were done by law enforcement, and 4 were performed by JDC. Any questions?
Thank you very much. I just have a quick question. How are we deciding what makes a person go to Division 1, Division 3, or Division 8? How's that separated?
From my understanding, Mr. Ursery, it's just divided on when that juvenile gets detained in our JDC. So once they come in, that decision is made prior, like, hey, this kid is going to go to Judge Zimmerman or this kid is going to go to Judge Warren. It's nothing of the JDC, but it's something that's predetermined that they have kind of worked out amongst each division of, any kid that comes in, I get this one, it's just like a back and forth thing from my understanding. If I have more information, I'll be glad to have better clarification next month.
Okay, thank you.
I can clarify for you. So when kids are brought in, Judge Zimmerman does detention hearings on Mondays and Tuesdays, and Judge Warren does detention hearings on Thursdays and Fridays. And so if a kid's brought in on a Tuesday, or Wednesday or Thursday, that juvenile will be in Judge Warren's court. If they come in on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that will be in Judge Zimmerman's court.
Thank you. You have a great weekend.
Item 4, Chief Deputy Cantrell, would you give us a report, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The month of March is not anything out of the ordinary on the calls for service or the other activities that we had, except our training is up, but we've got a School of Law Enforcement Supervision that the Criminal Justice Institute down in Little Rock brings up here about every 3 years. So we've got about 30 people from all across the state that are training in our facility. They train 1 week a month for 4 months. It's a very intensive supervisor's training course. So we've got that going on, brings our training hours up a little bit. Obviously everybody knows we had a tornado last week, and our guys were up there as it was happening with Springdale and trying to secure life and limb and make sure that there were adequate officers there to help people get to safety. The sheriff and myself will be attending the Arkansas Public Safety 911 Board hearing on the 19th down in Little Rock to determine if we're going to be able to keep 3 PSAPs, public safety answering points in Washington County. The state passed a legislative bill a couple years ago to consolidate those PSAPs. So we had 4 in Washington County. They've wanted us to reduce to 2, and we've petitioned to keep 3 in Washington County. So they'll make their determination. There were 6 entities that filed for additional PSAPs above what was authorized, and that was Washington, Benton, White, and Miller County, and then the city of Bryant. And for the life of me, the 6th one escaped me. I can't remember which one the 6th one was. But Washington and Benton County, well, obviously you all know, you see the census numbers too. You know, Washington and Benton County grew more than the other 73 counties combined in the last 10-year census. So we think we got a pretty good chance at keeping our extra PSAP or getting that extra one that we've asked for. But we'll know on Tuesday. This week is National Telecommunicators Week, fitting that we talk about our PSAPs. But so if you see one of our dispatchers, or we call them telecommunicators, tell them that we appreciate them and that they're kind of the heroes behind the phone. They're making that first contact and getting that initial information and keeping our officers safe. So we appreciate the job they do. Besides that, I'll be happy to answer any questions about the enforcement stuff. Major Denzer will have some jail information for you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. On 4.2, you can see our intakes are up a little bit, and everything else about the same. Transport has went quite a few more miles, but everything is growing on the increase a little bit on it. On 4.3, you can see that the count fluctuated a little bit, but the pretrial is still gaining. You know, almost up to 450 at times. 4.4, the overall bookings and everything, you know, that climbing just a little bit. 341 we turned loose that we should have kept, but they met the eligibility. So just always keep that number in mind on top of what we got. There's another 341 that should have probably stayed in jail. And with that there, we had 126 on the floor. And on 4.5, you can see the high count 742. We was up about 800. And, you know, and then Arkansas Department of Corrections took about 100, and now we're building back. They did take 25 last week. So, do you have any questions? I'd be glad to answer them.
Yeah, my first question, can you explain the increase in bookings for the month of March? The big jump from the previous months?
Well, usually the warm weather has a lot to do with it. I think COVID is, you know, everybody's kind of down right now. You know, we don't have any in the jail, knock on wood, but I think people are getting out more. And then, you know, always make a joke about it, but I also think it's good police work. So that's usually the warm weather, so it starts picking things up. People get out. People, you know, go more places and do more stuff.
It's going to continue at that level?
Oh, it could. You know, this year where we booked 880, you know, we used to book 1,000 or 1,100. And some of our worst years, you know, we went over 15,000 bookings in a year's time. So I think due to, you know, the population increase and the weather is usually what we kind of blame it on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought we stopped taking Madison County people.
We did. That's the ones that's left over that hadn't left. I think one of them's, you know, capital felony murder and some that can't get out yet that they can't find a place for. Now, we've not took any since then. That's just what's left over till they get to their trial date.
Okay. So Ms. Moore shared with me some information about holds that she had parsed through in terms of like the increase in sort of the numbers for March. And I mean, I understand that if we arrest somebody and they've got a warrant out somewhere else, we hold them. How long, it seems like we've got a lot of people on holds, and how long are we holding them before somebody else can get them? Because the numbers I've got, we've got 195 in March that were hold for another department.
Well, some of that, if it's an out-of-state warrant or whatever, they've got 10 days after they file the paperwork, but a lot of these holds are just so they come here and get them, it's surrounding areas, and that's usually not over a day or two.
Do they pay us while we hold them?
No.
So help me understand that. So we arrest somebody on a warrant out of Benton County, and they can just leave them here for up to 10 days?
No, I was talking about the out-of-state.
The out-of-state, okay.
Out-of-state warrants is the 10 days. No, Benton County, most people come within a day or day and a half, or like Benton County, they may be here in, 3 or 4 hours.
Is there a time limit for how long they can stay on an in-state warrant?
Well, we usually encourage, as quick as possible.
But there's not like a maximum like the out-of-state folks?
No. But nobody hardly ever stays that length of time. I'll have to go back and look at some of these other holds and see exactly what they are.
Okay, well, I don't know. If you look at the numbers.
A lot of them will come in on our charges with a hold out of wherever, and we may have them here for a month or whatever, pending our charges, and then they come and get them. So it's not always a hold just for somebody else. Most of them have local charges.
So
That make sense?
Yeah, well, but would we categorize them as hold for another department if they had charges here?
It shows it, yes. It'll show all the stuff.
Are they showing up in more than one column then?
I'll have to look. They could.
Okay.
I don't have that in front of me. I need to
Okay.
get that, and I can let you know.
Well, because if you look at, 411 for failure to appear in 1 month is, you think you can start to see why our population at the jail is what it is? Because that's huge.
But also on them, they may have 3 or 4 failure to appears. Not to make difference, you're right, there's more of them coming in every day. But, one person may have a half a dozen charges. We've had some with 8 or 10 failure to appears that has been turned loose because they met the criteria, and, now they're at the point to where the judges are keeping them.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Thank you, Major. Item 5 on the agenda is an update on the Crisis Stabilization Unit. Kristen McAllister's with us today, and I learned a couple weeks ago, if you remember, Kristen headed the CSU up when Ozark Guidance was doing it. She's now employed by UAMS.
Correct. Yes.
So go ahead, ma'am.
Sure. So I'll just give a brief update as to where we are. So we are in the process of continuing to hire folks and onboard folks that we've presented offers to. That has, I think everyone can understand where, hiring folks has been somewhat difficult, but we are making some progress with our nursing staff as well as with our provider staff, so APRNs. We are currently ordering or have ordered all of the additional supplies that we're needing for the unit to start up again. And we also had some additional things recently approved from the state to order. So we're in process and making things work as we can. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Talk to me about funding. You all aren't asking for additional fundings or any ARPA money, are you?
We have not, no.
No, but you're sufficiently funded at present to continue and to open up?
Yes.
Yes.
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Okay. That's just why I just want to make sure that you're well-funded. Thank you.
Thank you.
And welcome aboard.
I've got one. If you're gonna guess on what date we're gonna be open, what date are you guessing?
If I had to guess, yes. So I think right now it'd be really hard to assign a date just because it is reliant on hiring and getting folks in the door. What we do plan to do is as soon as we have enough staff, we will open and then continue to hire additional staff as needed. So it would be hard for me to assign a date. No. Sure.
Item 6 on the agenda is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee update.
Okay, so our committee met a couple weeks ago, and we discussed and finalized our failure to appear clinic, which will be April 28th at St. Paul's. And we finalized the flyer, so that has been distributed, and that will start being posted in area police departments as well as courts and the parole office, and we have volunteers that will set it up in libraries and other local businesses to try and get as much exposure as possible. We are working on translating it into Spanish and Marshallese. There will be a Spanish translator there, and we're working on getting a Marshallese translator there as well, just in case. The committee will be going on a Zoom call with Craighead County Mental Health Court so that we will be able to talk to them and ask them questions about setup and the logistics. We do have their budget as well as Sebastian County's budget of their mental health court so that we can start knowing what funds to ask for. We're also in the process of discussing with judges who would be able to take that on, what that would look like, whether it would be a circuit court or a district court item. The pretrial services, I spoke with Bexar County in Texas and Wake County in North Carolina to discuss with them their pretrial services. Wake County has about 1 million people, and they have 25 on their pretrial staff. And Bexar County has about 60 on their pretrial staff, and they have I don't remember the population of Bexar County, but much larger than Wake. And so just knowing that we're that much smaller, but hopefully starting to get that, knowing that we'll need more than one person if we want to get our pretrial services up and running. So the diversionary case manager has been sent to our contractors to be graded so that it will then come back to you at a later date, hopefully next month, for you to vote on. And we, like I said, we're working on mental health court for when that can get started. And I will answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What are your projected expectations in reducing the FTA numbers?
As far as
Reducing
long-term or short-term or just?
Let's just go short-term and then medium range. What are you expecting to reduce?
So mid and short-term with the failure to appear clinics, that would hopefully take off warrants. Last time we had 27, and that was when we hadn't asked people to pre-register. We had very little warning for people to come, and so hopefully with 3 weeks of advertising and bringing that up, we're hoping to have more than 30 people come, and that means that they're hopefully able to plead their case and either get back on the docket or go ahead and set up a parole or whatever kind of plea bargain they set up. And so with having that quarterly, that would reduce the failures to appear. Long-term, we're hoping to not have the recidivism at all. And so long-term, it would be getting people into programs so that they get into a habit and they're taught how to keep a schedule, how to do a job, how to do finances, just things that you and I were taught that maybe they didn't have the home life that we had, and they weren't taught those things growing up. And so having them in those programs would reduce the failures to appear as well.
If I can throw something in there. That's kind of the purpose, one of the purposes behind the pretrial services program. It's just to elaborate on that, is to have someone keeping track of individuals who are released and giving them reminders, giving them services and whatnot. But I want to go back to Justice Madison's question earlier about the FTAs. The 411, that's total charges. So I think sometimes, like Major Denzer was saying, it's sometimes a person has more than one failure to appear. And so if you're looking at the charge detail list, that doesn't, if you added up all those numbers, that's not going to be the number of people who are currently incarcerated. That's the number of charges they're being held on. And the hold for other departments, that is people who have our charges, who have charges in Benton County or in Oklahoma. So once we finish with them, we're not, I think there's another category called courtesy holds, where we're holding someone for Kansas or we're holding someone for, but I think almost all, if not all, the majority of the hold for other department have charges in our courts that we're working on, and then once we finish, then somebody else will come get them, and it'll be their responsibility. So I hope that answered your question and your previous question. Okay.
So with that said, the faster we get them through our courts, the faster they can leave. So if it takes 30 days, that's y'all's fault, not people waiting on it.
Yes.
So we need to get you up earlier.
Yes.
You need to give him more prosecutors and the public defenders more attorneys.
And on that note, sorry, we do have the COVID money that came in from the state. They are just part-time, but we're looking to hire individuals, and I've hired, we both the public defender's office and our office got 4 positions, and so far we've hired 2. It's kind of difficult because they're part-time and they're temporary, but we're trying to identify people who that would appeal to. So hopefully, and the purpose behind those positions is to clear up the backlog of cases that were filed essentially when the courts were shut down. So hopefully that will speed things up and alleviate some of the burden on our deputies and on the deputy public defenders, so that we can focus on getting cases resolved more quickly.
Where are we on developing the metrics that we've asked for?
So with metrics, again, that's a tricky situation, so that until we get our diversionary case manager, we can't get the metrics of how many people are diverted. So as far as metrics of what we have, without programs, we can't measure what is going to be different. We can look at other counties, which is why I've been meeting with the other counties to discuss their metrics, but we are trying to get that as well.
And
Would you like this committee to develop the metrics?
What would that look like?
Well, I don't know.
Because
But-
that's what we're working to figure out.
All I know is we've talked for a year and a half about a whole bunch of things, okay? I don't have one number in front of me that tells me whether we've moved a step forward or a step backwards.
Okay.
Now, Matt, you and the public defenders, I'm sure, can come up with some, I can define some metrics that I would like to see, but I'm a home builder. I'm
Right.
not in your business.
And I think that what the main goals we're trying, the metrics we would give would be estimates, is we're looking at how long a case takes from beginning to end, or how long it takes, and these, some of the numbers that we have acquired are how long it takes from a person's arrest to their introduction into, or their transfer into drug court. And so those are solid numbers that we can use, but everything else is going to be an estimate. I mean, that's something that we can definitely pinpoint and look to as areas of improvement. But in terms of, because what I would like to do is shorten the time from arrest to resolution. I would also like to decrease the number of failures to appear and decrease the number of people who are rearrested from being released from the county jail until their court date. I can get all those numbers of people who have multiple cases, people who have failed to appear, but and that'll give us a goal to shoot toward, but everything else is going to be based on estimates of how well these programs work in other counties and other places. So I don't know if that's kind of what you're looking for, because right now we're going to be estimating. We're just going to be estimating how well we're going to be able to perform here. If pretrial services is a big success, then we may be cutting our failures to appear by 2/3, by 75%. And to me, that'd be great, but I think it's all based on,
Yeah, so when you ask for metrics, my understanding of metrics is a change, and in order to have a change in a metric, you need to have something that is arbitrating that change. So we can give you all the metrics that you want about the problems that we have. And that's what Matt was saying, is like, I can tell you right now how long it takes for someone with multiple charges to get to court, and that's a problem. But until we have someone like a diversionary case manager, or we have another program, I know that Returning Home is opening more beds later this year. When we have that, we can give you how that has changed things. But until we have an arbitrator of change, we can't give you the metrics of change.
I'd like the numbers of where we are today. How are we going to know if anything changed if we don't know where we started?
Right, and so last month we gave you the data of drug court, that it takes 60 days for someone to do drug court, and then that we're trying to reduce that to 30 days. So that's the kind of stuff that we have been bringing to you. Would you like more like that, or would you like a variety, or what else are you looking for?
Well, it sounds to me like you're preparing to come to us for some money for some programs.
Correct.
And I'm not interested in paying for programs if we're just going to talk about doing things and don't know where we're going.
Okay. Well,
Okay, so figure it out. I'll be happy to meet with you and tell you what my thoughts are, but we got to have some numbers.
Right. And so with the diversionary case manager, which is what we're looking for, that's our next step right now. And so right now we are looking at using, trying to do a short term on that so that we can get you those metrics and then ask for it the following year for a longer term, having it as a temporary position and then going in for a longer term, so that we can get that, so that we can use that temporary time in order to get you the metrics of what is changing.
And I can tell you right now that last year alone, we had over 1,000 people fail to appear for arraignment alone. And so that's 1,000 warrants that have to go out, 1,000 warrants. We have to type up 1,000 warrants that have to be served by the sheriff's office. And so I can't tell you how many of those we can, that we can decrease or that we can eliminate, I can only give you goals, and that's a lot of that is based on what other pretrial services are being, where else they're being done, because they're not being done in the state. I don't know of any place in the state that has a type of system that we're talking about doing. So that's why Drew is looking outside the state. There may be some, in Pulaski County or somewhere. I'm not aware of them. I'm not saying there's not. I'm just not aware of any. So it's hard to have a comparison and look to them to see what kind of success rate they've had. So we're looking to other places to look at success rates for the potential problems that we're facing. I mean, I can identify problems. I can identify problem areas and areas that I want to improve in on the numbers that I think that these services will do. And I can provide you with those numbers. I just can't give you an estimate of how much success it's going to be. That's why we're looking at other places.
And I'm going to repeat myself.
Okay.
We got to know where we're starting, Matt.
Right.
And I got to have some numbers on a piece of paper that understands where we're starting, or we won't know whether we're going forwards or backwards.
Okay, and the sheriff's department gives where we are standing. That is where we're standing. What the sheriff's department gives to you guys is where we're standing and what we need to reduce.
Matt, how many more staff do you think that would help this ship sail smoother? In your that's if we're going to guess a little bit, how many more people do you need to prosecute?
I don't know. I mean, right now, our biggest problem is the failures to appear. We've got as many staff as we can doing that. I'm not here to ask for more staff right now. I'm trying to do one thing at a time, and so I can provide numbers. I'll do that tomorrow. I will sit down and I will go through every failure to appear we've had, and I'll ask for how long it takes. See if we can figure out a metric on how long it takes from arrest to disposition. I can do that.
Can we just teach them all to behave and everything will be good?
No, we can't. I mean, that's what we're focusing on. Yeah. But at the current point, we cannot, because I think that with appropriate, and this is just my personal opinion, and so take it for what it's worth, but a lot of these folks, if they are released and there is some supervision and guidance given to them, and they're given programs such as drug treatment and or job training or whatever, they're not going to fall back into the same cycle and keep getting rearrested over and over and over and over again. We've got people with 8, 9, 10 charges because they keep getting arrested on lower level offenses, and we don't have room at the jail for them, and so we release them. And those take time, but I think that's another conversation for another time, and I could go on for days about this, but we don't have the time to do that. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this all about services and diversion programs?
no, sorry.
This being
I mean,
the Criminal Justice Coordinating
yes,
Committee?
I had the understanding that we were trying to identify the obstacles between pretrial, your office, and the circuit judges, and trying to move out as so many as possible from one to the other.
That's part of it,
And to avoid
yes.
the bottlenecking between the two offices. Okay, if that's one part of it, then why can't we get those metrics?
So if you give me specific metrics of what you want, I can give you specific metrics of what. But if you're just saying metrics in general, I'm trying to look at the entire criminal justice system. And so if you ask me, can we get pretrial metrics? Yes, I will get that to you next month.
Have you identified the obstacles or the bottlenecking between the prosecutor's office or pretrial and circuit judges' offices?
There are several. The biggest one is the backlog after COVID, and that is what these four part-time positions that the COVID money is funding, and that is what Matt is trying to do with hiring these 4 positions.
Have you all identified a solution for that?
He is hiring
Just 4 people.
He's hiring
And
these
that, I
4
mean, how's that going to
positions
get to the circuit judges any quicker if they have their docket?
because they're able to, because there's only so much time in a prosecutor's week, and when you add more prosecutors, they have more time to do all of the
Okay,
paperwork
and then
and all
so
of the
this is
discovery
what
that
I'm
needs
saying,
to be
the
done.
data of how many judges.
Talk one at a time, please.
Okay, yes, sir, I will. The numbers between how many cases, how many dockets the circuit judges can hear per day, per week, per month, or whatever, and how many cases are prepared for by. I mean, there's a lot of information that we don't have. We don't have a starting point, and I agree with the chairman. We don't even have a starting point of what you're looking at, and all I'm hearing is about services. But what about the original problem that we had, and the reason behind this whole criminal justice review was because we needed help between one department and the other.
Mhm. And that the review that happened in 2020, it identified services that needed to be done, and that was a big part of what is.
And but not just services.
Not just, but it is a big part of it.
Okay, tell me what part of the whole picture, is it 75% is services and 25% is just
I would say I
adding staff?
wouldn't feel comfortable giving an exact percentage, but I would say the majority is services.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. We
And-
need to see that from 2020, from when we paid for this thing to now. We don't know what you're looking at. And all I'm hearing is this is about diversionary services.
No.
It's not 100% about a diversionary services. However,
Okay.
in order to reduce
But this is what I'm hearing. Oh, I'm sorry.
in
Mr.
order to reduce recidivism, there needs to be, as Matt said, there needs to be some kind of help for the people that, like drug court is, and like pretrial services are and could be. And so there has to be some kind of give and take. So right now, we're working on the front end process of hiring these positions that need to be brought up so that we can fix the backlog, which is a huge problem. But there are also other things that we can do a multi-pronged attack as opposed to just the one. And so when you ask for metrics when you ask for metrics in general, I understood that to mean that you were asking for as a whole, which takes time. But if you are asking for dockets per day and cases per attorney, I can give you that within the week.
Okay, and also, what is a backlog?
Okay?
Backlog
And
is-
what is,
According to the Arkansas Association or the Administrative Office of Courts, backlog was 11,000 cases. 11,000 open cases
Here in Washington
in
County?
Washington and Madison counties. Some of that is a
Okay.
little bit inaccurate. I would say that the number is probably closer to 7,000 or 8,000 because that is open cases, which include warrants, open warrants. So someone fails to appear, they've got a warrant out for their arrest. An officer can't find someone who is ripping off people with their credit cards. They issue a warrant. That is an open case.
Okay.
So we're dealing with probably 7,000 to 8,000 cases and a finite number of prosecutors, a finite number of defense attorneys, a finite number of judges.
Certainly.
And if we added, maybe 8 hours to every day, then our folks could have enough time to do everything. That's why the state has given us these additional positions to try to ease the load, but you got to keep in mind that these are part-time, temporary positions, and a lot of people sit there and think, well, if it may end June 30th, I'm not going to, take a chance on that. I don't want that job. So they're very hard to fill. We're doing the best we can. You know, the public defenders are overworked. We're overworked. We can sit up in court all day long, but we still got to work our cases, and we still got to communicate with each other about cases tomorrow, which is hard to do when we're in court all day today. That's another problem. There's not one issue that's bottlenecking it. There are 5 or 6 wrecks on the freeway, and they're in different spots. And once you get through them, then there's another one. There are problems everywhere. And so that's why we're looking into pretrial services. That's why we're looking into ways to speed up the time from arrest to disposition. You know, the pretrial services can help do that. These things are intertwined, and I know that I know y'all don't want to hear just about pretrial services, but that's one thing that can help the court efficiency.
I am very much in favor of pretrial services. I'm a big supporter of what Magdalene's House is doing, what Nick Robbins is doing, and any other diversion program. I am supporting all of that. But what I'm saying is it's hard for me to understand what exactly is going on in your department if I don't even know what the backlog is. Mm-hmm. I just hear there's a backlog. I go, okay, but how big is it? You disclosed it. Now I know. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to support you the best way I can, but I can't. I guess we're just not even speaking the same language or communicating in a way that I can understand and see the full picture of this is what we're doing. And I agree, if we don't measure it, we can't achieve it. You're trying to lose weight? Got to get on the scale to begin with. I don't want to get on the scale. I don't want to know how much I weigh. But no, I'll know if my jeans fit. That's when I'll know I've lost weight. No, you got to get on the scale. You got to measure it first. And that's where I'm coming from. I mean, that's just the way that's the way my mindset is. If I have to change and think differently, I'm trying to understand you so I can best support you. Okay? So I didn't realize that was your backlog. Your backlog. Didn't know that. Now I do. Now we can measure it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I didn't intend to start an argument tonight. We're all on the same side. Sure. But what I'm saying is that if we're going to fund additional programs, we better know on day one where we're at and where we think we're going so we can measure it. And Matt, the world I live in, all successful people are overworked. That's part of it's called life.
Right.
So, and I get it, but again, I want you give us some numbers, and if we can see the numbers and see that the help makes sense, I think this group can figure out how to get you whatever help you need. But we got to know what it is. Other questions? Thank you. Next, we're at item 7, which is the public comment period. We have a 12-minute comment period with a 3-minute limit for each individual to comment on items.
Hi, Sarah Moore, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I'm really appreciative of the conversation that was had tonight on several of the topics in regard to our criminal system. I wanted to touch on the CSU and the update. I'd like to remind folks I actually started and attended my first quorum court meeting in January of 2019, and what brought me here was the Crisis Stabilization Unit being a year behind in opening. For those of us that are in the county and in this region who have family members that suffer from severe mental illness, this place is a lifeline. And so I really encourage that we do everything possible. At the current path that we're going, it's possible that the CSU has already been closed 9 months, this life-saving resource. And if they need funding to incentivize staff to get to this area to move from another state, and we have ARPA funds, I would say let's get creative and get those doors open. They've been closed too long, and we'd love for those doors to open. Yes, they're a diversion, but they're a lifesaver for many of our community members, more importantly. Additionally, I'm really happy to hear us talking about metrics. I think those are incredibly important, but I will say in the state of Arkansas, it's very recognized that we are not incredibly data rich. Unfortunately, many of our systems are lacking. They don't talk to one another. And so I'd really encourage us to think about in best practices when we've reached out to NACO and we talked to the criminal justice head over NACO, they've pointed to best practice counties, places like Douglas County, who one of their first hires was hiring somebody with a PhD who's a data engineer who created metrics and created a dashboard so that we could see where we were. And then when we put things in place, could see and measure where we were going. So that's going to take some investment. Do we have the appropriate systems in place today? We need to scour and look, and I don't know that we fully vetted that out. Do we need to make some investments? That's something that with American Rescue Plan Act monies we could be doing, but it's definitely something that needs to happen, and I would encourage not only for decision makers to see that, but the public is very vested in this as well and where we're going. In talking about the system and talking about failures to appear, pretrial services at this point obviously has not been started, and we talked a lot about it. It can look different and be unique to each area, and I applaud the efforts that the CJCC has made so far, but I would really encourage us to, whenever they bring those pieces of information forward, that we act as urgently as possible and put those in place, because we know in the state there's a conversation about overcrowding in county jails, and then in the prison system that we're looking to spend up to $100 million. Those are all of our taxpayer dollars across all of that we're all going to pay for. One of the things that JFA, who does the 10-year prison projection and has done that for the last 28 years, what they talked about, the reason that more people are going into prison is because they're saying, in the state of Arkansas, okay, can I have 30 seconds more and I'll tell you, I'll finish my I will. So JFA has done 28 years of the 10-year prison population projection, and one of the things that drives why they say the population will increase is if we do nothing different than we are today. One of the things they point out is that in our region, the state of Arkansas has some of the highest numbers of plea deals, some of the highest numbers of people in pretrial detention who get longer sentences. That all is because our public defenders are overloaded that take care of those indigent defense. We need to invest in that area. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Hello there, Robert Dennis. I'll say Farmington, Arkansas, since that's technically where I live. I just wanted to point out something so that we could at least think about it, or I know it's not this committee, but the whole quorum court. It's time to get a bigger desk up here. It's time to have a speaker stand over here, a speaker for our microphone on this side, and a microphone on this side, and 2 chairs. Because many times we have multiple people come up, and we need to accommodate that where you can hear, but also where we can hear back here, and where the public can hear, without the speaker for each person, or a microphone for each person. So I think, just start thinking about that, and I'm not sure what committee. I know it's not this committee, but I just wanted to bring it to the JP's attention that we need to update our sound system on this end anyway. So, thank you.